What happens when a system tells a child he doesn't belong, but her mother knows better? Today's guest isn't just about an advocate. She's a PhD pursuer, a researcher, a woman with dyslexia, and most importantly, a mother raising a neurodivergent child in a world that often overlooks brilliance wrapped up in difference. She's taught her daughter to speak up, to stand tall, and understand her own brain, not as a broken, but as powerful. In this episode, we explore what it takes to raise not just a child, but an advocate. We talk purpose, bias, education system, and the everyday courage of showing up when others don't. This is more than a conversation. It's a guide for you parents, for the teachers, and anyone who believes that inclusion isn't just a trend, it's a right. Okay, I'm so happy to have you again, Yolanda. Last time you were here, we looked at your experience with dyslexia. We looked at your profession. We also looked at your journey into dyslexia and also providing guidance to parents about digital risks. But today we're going to push the boundary a little bit. We want to know, in fact, you as the audience, you're going to know why. What is Yolanda's why? And what pushed her from just being a specialist to being an advocate? An advocate not just for your daughter Diana, whom you guys have just listened to, but an advocate for others. What is it that pushed you into that space?
My journey is really very personal, and I think the first reason for that would be because the system failed me as a child. So I went through school and university with multiple barriers of learning. I struggled with anxiety, with depression, and burnout. I really thought that there was something wrong with me. And when I was diagnosed in my search to try and get the right help for my daughter, I was diagnosed at the age of 39. And for the first time in my life, I just made sense to myself. Everything that I struggled with made sense. So diagnosis comes with so much peace. It is a gift that we get. And my own journey with my daughter as well. So the system failed me. And I so many times feel that the system failed my own child as well. So I love to advocate for these children because I know the difference that the right support makes in their lives for the parents, for the children. And as I was working in a system with children, I blindly trusted the system to act in my child's best interest. And I was not concerned. I didn't worry about anything because I know that my child was a top performer. I know that she was giving her best with everything. She was excelling in all the different areas. And I trusted the school to actually act in her best interest. And the moment when the system failed her, it's a big concern, because if my child that is a top performer experience discrimination and systemic barriers, what about the other children that are not top performers? And that is a big concern. So I really have to advocate for these children because they can't advocate for themselves. They're children. They still need to learn. They need to be safe. They need to be protected, supported, and guided.
Absolutely. So you could relate. You could relate to not just your daughter, because you yourself are dyslexic, as you've mentioned. You could relate to the difficulties that these children are facing, and you couldn't just, you wanted to do more than just to relate.
Absolutely. I know how it feels to feel helpless, to know that there's something wrong, but I don't know what is wrong. I am doing all these interventions and I'm doing everything that I can, but it is not helping. So I became the parent and the person that I needed when my daughter went through difficulties. And that's why advocacy is really just so important for me, because I know we have to stand up for these children.
as you can hear from home, you cannot leave it to the school to advocate for your child or to act in the best interest for your child. As a parent or as a family or member or a guardian, you need to take it upon yourself, as you can see, because the system can fail. It can fail you, as in the case of Diana. So maybe to continue on this topic, was there a moment when you realized, Yolanda, that, hang on, this has to stop. I need to start advocating for my child. More than that, I actually need to teach my child to learn how to advocate for themselves. Can you share that? When did that come through for you?
As I've been in the system for many years, I always trusted the system. And I was working with children with barriers every single day, working with the parents, and internally you always try and put the support in place. And I think what really knocked me was that when it happened to my own child, because I never ever expected that. I always really thought that, my child is really doing well. I was never called in for a meeting at school. I was never called in for anything that Diana did wrong. She never ever received a demerit in her life. She never ever did really anything wrong at school. So I really thought my child has this bright future. She got everything sorted out, and the school is supportive. The school is acting in the best interest. And then all of a sudden your world just collapsed. And then, but how is this possible? How is the system failing my child? And my child is functional. So if I have to look at all the children that I was working with, is Diana is one of the neurodivergent children that are really excelling in a mainstream school. So even if you look, for example, at all the representations, if you look at your first teams, if you look at your prefects, there's not much representation for neurodivergence in those areas. So yes, they do have a few, but you also have to look at the complexity of their diagnosis and other pharmaceutical intervention. So I really just feel that the school systems are not really geared to give these children equal opportunities.
Yeah, and you're raising a very important point. Representation matters. When more neurodivergent students or learners or people see themselves in leadership, everybody else will want to aspire for the same. So, and that goes across the board. If girls don't see CEO girls or girls, women engineers, they will feel like, no, that's not for us, right? Here is a child who's exerting herself, who's pushing all the boundaries to make sure that they can access to opportunities that are usually closed off for them in the schooling system. And they're pushing really hard, yet they are not being recognized. So I can imagine how challenging that must have been for you as a parent.
Absolutely, it was very challenging for me. And these children, with their barriers, they really work hard. They really have to put in so much extra effort. And if discrimination are being tolerated in our school and enabled, a lot of the parents don't want to ask the difficult questions. They don't want to ask because they're scared of their children being victimized. So because parents really trust the school with their children, I just accept that, okay, fine, my child does not deserve it. I'm going to back off. I'm not going to ask the questions. I'm not going to be that difficult parent, because the moment when I'm that difficult parent, maybe they're going to victimize my child. Maybe my child will suffer the consequences because I'm asking the difficult questions.
Yeah, but that's the moment when we need to step in as parents. We've been entrusted with the job to raise these children. Yes, it will be uncomfortable to the school that you're asking questions. It will also be uncomfortable maybe to you as a parent, but sometimes we have to do it. What I'm learning from your answer as well, Yolanda, is that parents, ideally, you don't have to wait until an incident like this happens, because yes, as a parent, you can kind of stomach it or kind of manage to cope with it. But sometimes a rejection like that to a child who's been really working hard can really damper their spirit, their energy. And we don't want you to get there, considering the hard work you do behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And the hardest part of all of this was for me, when I look at my own child, it's a celebration for neurodiversity. And 20% of society are at risk of being like neurodivergent. And whenever we work with neurodiversity, it is always like that. We always focus on everything that is wrong with them.
Yeah.
And here we have a child with multiple barriers to learning. She's excelling in all areas. She's really doing well. And I really felt that because I'm in the system and I advocate like for neurodiversity, that this point in time would have been a celebration for neurodiversity, so that every child that have a barrier to learning, that they can see, but like, I can excel, I can do well, I can become a prefect, I can give my best, I can become an academic performer. I think like the moment if we can celebrate diversity, we give so much hope to all these children that just like struggle each and every day in a school system. But the system took this moment, instead of celebrating neurodiversity, they discriminated against the deficit that goes along with it. And that's very hard to accept.
Yeah, and I can imagine how hard it is to accept, especially more so that the deficit or the surplus, if I may, far exceeds the deficit. So it can be really difficult to reconcile. Maybe as we look on this self-advocacy in children, because self-advocacy is not something that's usually taught, or it's not usually something that people that are not adults or teenagers or grown-ups learn, right?
Yes.
But here you are saying, my daughter, you're still in primary school, but I'm going to teach you how to advocate for yourself, right? How did that begin? How did you start? And at what age was she when you taught her how to advocate for herself?
I think if parents must think back to their childhood, is like the moment when you have a difficult child, that you make a sandwich for them and you cut it in triangles and they throw a tantrum because they actually wanted it in squares. I think that is actually the moment where children start advocating for themselves, because they need to be empowered. They need to feel that they can make decisions. They need to feel that I have a right to have things my way. And very often we just like, no, this is how it is. You have to deal with it. So since Diana was like small as well, it was very important for me to always go with how she feels, what she needs. So I will always ask her, how would you like to have your sandwich, in triangles or like in squares? And that is where advocacy stands. Like if we're going to continuously tell children that you're just like being difficult, we destroy the fire within them to advocate for themselves. So if we can give children like the opportunity to have a say and to be difficult and to stand up for what they want, when it gets to bigger things in life, they will also know that I wanted my sandwich to be cut in squares and I got my way. So like now, if I need to stand up for myself, I will get my way, because like we have to give them the opportunity to practice so that they can stand up for themselves.
Wow, what an empowering way of looking at raising a child, right? And you had it from the expert. It starts from young at home, where you listen to them. You listen to the children in terms of what they want and how they want it. Otherwise, we fear losing that fire as they grow up to say, no, I cannot want it this way. Nobody's going to want or give me an opportunity or even listen to me. But that's when we should be starting.
Definitely. And if we look at the school system as well, the school system does not allow these children to have like a say, because it is a one-size-fits-all model. We just have to do like for majority. So it's like mass reduction. We have to get these children out of the school system without actually like acknowledging them for their uniqueness, for their strengths, for their differences, and what they can bring to the classroom. So even if we look, for example, like at leadership, neurodivergent children, they have so much to offer. Yes, they might have difficulties with speech. They might have difficulties with communication, but they have amazing ideas. They have amazing ideas to bring people together. They have a good sense of humor. So there's always fun when you are like around them. So yes, even like if we look at neurotypical, they have their deficits as well. But at the end of the day, it is the opportunities that we give these children, what they bring to the table. We can't have a leader group of 20 people and they're all exactly the same and they all just like followers. We need children to be like different. We need them to be acknowledged for their differences, how they see the world, how they experience the world. And then also all the neurodivergent children, they love detail. So they will always like bring the detail in, but like we can't do it this way, we have to do it like this. They make life interesting. And I think it is really like such a big gap if you do not include these children like in opportunities.
I mean, I'm thinking back to our robotics class, right? We have quite a few students similar to Diana, and I cannot imagine not having them in our class. The richness they bring to the class. I mean, we are talking about space science, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about new developments in medical technology. They are there, they've got an opinion. The way they look at things, as you say, it makes life richer, life more interesting.
Absolutely. And also like sometimes like with Yana as well, she just like needs time to process. So when we're in the school system as well, everything needs to be actioned now, everything now. But give me time, and my brain is working differently. It is a processing difficulty. So give me the information. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. I will go and think about it, and I might come back with a brilliant idea, but give me the opportunity. So that's also something that that schools needs to be aware of, that a speech difficulty, for example, and dyslexia goes hand in hand. So I struggle to speak because like my brain didn't process the information yet. So my brain didn't give me all the words that I need to say at the moment. But if you give me some space, I could organize what is happening in my brain, and then I will be able to communicate. But I just cannot do it like instantly. But you can't penalize me because my brain works differently.
Sure. So in a fast-paced lifestyle that we all live across the globe now, it's important to slow down and give people time to process their thoughts. And this goes for whether a child is on the spectrum or a child is not. So really by making an environment that's inclusive, it benefits everybody. So we need to be thinking that way. It benefits everybody. Yes, it benefits our neurodivergent students even more, but we all need it. We all need to slow down and listen to what people have to say, because more often than not, the ideas that they need to say, if we're not giving them an opportunity, we risk losing all the ideas and seeing the different dimensions of the problem or of the solution for that matter.
Absolutely. And I think we actually lose so much if we're going to have a world with people just thinking the same all the time. We're never ever going to advance. If we look at all the engineers, at all the big people in society, they were all like neurodivergent, and that is why they excelled, and they came with new ideas, new innovations. They thought of the world differently, and that is what we need.
We need to celebrate more of that. You mentioned about cutting a sandwich in, triangles or in squares. What other early self-advocacy acts did you notice in your daughter when she was younger, that this is a way of her advocating for herself?
It's actually so amazing. I think that the whole neurodiverse brain goes with advocacy, because these children are quite attached to the outcome. If they want to wear this outfit, this is what they want to wear. They take a stand. I'm not going to wear anything else. And they have a moral compass that is really very important for them. So right is right and wrong is wrong. And the moment when things doesn't add up for them, like that, they will ask the difficult questions. They can't process and move on until they understand the situation. So even like from small, with Diana as well, and I think with all the other children as well, is they have their specific ways, and if they have their ways, life becomes easier and life becomes more manageable for them. But that is also a way of advocating for myself, because like, I need this to be able to be okay. I need to do this. I need to wear this so that I can be comfortable, so that I can do whatever you expect me to do. So I think that if we actually just like acknowledge the neurodiverse brain a little bit like more, we focus on the strengths, we will have so many more advocates that can stand up for these children, because I think it is a natural part of the brain that is just present.
Yeah. Thank you very much for those thoughts. I'm going to move on to the next question now. And this deals with you as an expert. You've had, as we've mentioned, decades of experience in neurodivergency, or in the space of neurodivergence. And I'm curious, what has been your biggest challenge as a mom and a professional within the schooling system as you push advocacy?
I think the hardest thing was when it hit home. So when it started affecting my child. So working with other people's children and with other families, you always act with the best intentions. You always do whatever you can, and you try and guide, you try and motivate, you try and get the system to support them. But the moment when it hit home, it was like, I don't know, it was a moment that I still have like trauma of that day when everything like happened, because I trusted the system. I never ever saw it come. I never ever saw it like happen. And that was the hardest part for me. But then I want to bring it back to the core issue is, if something like this could happen to my child, I had no concerns, I had no fears, there was no issues. I did not expect anything like this to happen, because she was such a high performer. But if my child was not safe in the school system, and she's one of the best performers at school,
and she's got you,
and she got me, and I'm advocating for her, and I gave her all the skills that she needs, my concern is, what about the other children? What about the other children that are not as strong as Diana, that are not like performing on the level where she is? If such a top performer can face discrimination and exclusion, parents trust the school unconditionally with their children. But can we trust them? Is our children safe at school? Do we have to do more? Do we have to ask more questions? Do we have to be that difficult parents to put pressure on the schools and ask the difficult questions? But in the same sentence, we trust the schools not to discriminate against our children. So it's a difficult situation, I think, where we find ourselves currently, because we are an inclusive education system. The department is really focusing on inclusive education, educational equity, and my personal experience was not inclusive.
And I can see how that can be so challenging to come to terms with, because for you personally as an expert, because you have been advocating. And for the many neurodivergent learners at your school, they felt when their parents dropped their child at school, they knew there's somebody who's going to stand up for their child and protect them and guide them and defend them and nurture them, right? And so you, as you mentioned, you would even go beyond and make sure that they get the resources they need to feel supported. And here we are, it happens to your own child. And I can't help but to think that, would you say there's also a level of education that's missing from the teachers and maybe even the school system itself, to say we don't all learn the same, but we need to give our neurodivergent students or learners that sing or act or live differently, we need to give them opportunities towards leadership.
These children, they emotionally 30% lower than the age expectation. So when I have a child that is 12 years old, they have the emotional capacity of a 9-year-old. So whenever I look at leadership, I compare like a pear to an apple, because the pear is like a 12-year-old neurotypical child that is on an emotional level for a 12-year-old child. And then I have like a top performer that is 12 years old, but emotionally like maybe on a 9-year-old child. And automatically that discrimination and the judgment comes in again, because like that child is not there yet. But it's not the child's fault. It is just the way that their brain is like structured. So I think it's really very important for leaders, for management, for the people that are like in charge of all the leadership positions, all the big decisions that needs to be taken, that they must have the awareness and the knowledge of what neurodiversity is, how it affects these children. And most importantly is that we have to steer away from the deficit approach, because whenever we work with a neurodivergent brain, it is like we always focus on the deficits, we focus on the diagnosis, we focus on the things that the children can't do. And wow, we miss the biggest gift of the brain, like their strengths and the way that these children experience the world, and that is what matters.
And that's a shame if you are a school and you're missing out on the surplus that these students come with. By just focusing on the deficit, we need to move away from that. And as you had, those of you in leadership, you have a beautiful opportunity of creating an environment that's very inclusive, where everybody thrives. And if you take advantage of it, you would only see the benefits for your school. And I'm sure there's a lot of scientific research that has been written about the surplus mindset or deficit mindset, which we want to move away from. And within the context, or while we're still talking about schools, and we know that schools uses the terms like support or accommodating. What does that look like, or what do you wish that should look like?
A huge frustration currently. So I think whenever the word support and accommodations are being used in school, it's seen as a burden. So it's a burden. Oh, I have to support these children. Oh, accommodations. I need to fit that into my timetable. So once again, that is the exclusionary way of including these children. So whenever we're supposed to work with these children, support must not be a burden. So we need to normalize that neurodiversity is part of society. We have to normalize that these brains are different. We need to normalize that they need support. We need to normalize that they need accommodations. So once again, we need to move away from the deficit approach, and we have to focus just like on the benefits that we will get if we put the support and the accommodations in place. So we have to move away from the negative deficit approach, and we have to focus just on the gifts and the strengths that comes with neurodiversity.
And it's a privilege to actually be in a position of support, because if you watch, I mean, we had some of our experts, I think we had Malcolm yesterday, who's a mentor and a coach for neurodiversity, and the stories he tells about how he coached and mentored his students, and looking at not deficit, as you're referring to it, looking at the surplus of what these young people are about, and watching them thrive. You know, it's such a fulfilling thing to observe. So you as a teacher at school, if you're in a position to provide support, if you look at it, look at support not as a deficit, but looking at it in a positive mindset, you will actually have a very fulfilling experience of knowing that you contributed to supporting and nurturing and even bringing out the best in the child.
Absolutely. And what these children just actually need is they're dependent from the schools for support. They need the support. They need the combination, the accommodations. They need the teacher to just like accept them and to help them to be able to fit into a system that is not designed for them.
Sure. Yeah, so we can talk the whole day about this, but I know our dear teachers that work so hard to make sure that they share the education in the most loving and mindful way, that you are listening with us. And as we grow through some of this feedback, and I think our communities become better for it. So maybe let's continue with some of the strategies that you use to teach Diana to advocate for herself. Um, can you share maybe one of those two strategies that maybe the parents at home, they can try them out, because the parents will not always be there to advocate for their children. Share some of those, maybe one or two, so the parents can take this away with them to encourage and empower their children to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. I think that with advocacy is directly linked with decision making. So when I advocate, it is a decision that I make, and I feel quite firm about the decision. So in my parenting as well, it's very important for me to allow Diana the freedom to make decisions. So she's a child, she needs to learn. Yes, she's going to fail, but she needs to fail to be able to learn. So today she makes a decision, this is what she want to wear. We go out, no, it was not the best decision. Next time, she's going to make a better decision. So as parents, sometimes we tend to tell our children all the time what they have to do, what they have to wear, what they have to do. We just instruct them all the time. But we need to teach them to make decisions and to take accountability for those decisions. So for me, it is very important. There's certain things, for example, like Diana liked to do online shopping, like for Shein. But I trust her, and she knows that I'm trusting her. So she got like a budget, and she can go in and she can go and do her card, she can check the totals, she takes responsibility for that. And I think that is also like a way of empowering her to make her own decisions. So if there is something that is important for her, she knows how to take responsibility for a decision. If she ordered something and it arrives here and it is horrible, then it is like, okay, like how can we do it better next time? But up to now, I have to say, she's been absolutely amazing with that. She creates a cart. I don't go and double check her cart. I trust her. I give her guidelines. I tell her like, this is the box of what is like acceptable. And then whenever she's ready, I never ever go through it and scrutinize, but why this one? Why this? Why that? I give her the freedom to make a decision, to think about it, and when she's ready to action it, like she proceeds. And it's a simple way of giving her the opportunity to make a decision and take responsibility for that. So when big decisions needs to be taken, they have the skills of like continuously making the small decisions. And when a big decision is there, they have the skills and they can just immediately like implement what is known to them.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one strategy. I'm literally, I don't know at this stage whether my children are on the spectrum or not, even though I do have my suspicion. But I'm listening as a neurotypical mom to this, to say it starts when they're young, when you allow them to make their own decisions, but also to take responsibilities of those decisions they've made. And that empowers them, in essence, to become, advocate of themselves. So that's just one of the strategies that that you've just heard about, what you can do to empower your child to have confidence to advocate for themselves. So I'm wondering whether there are any specific books, specific affirmations, or even, I don't know, podcasts or tools that have helped your daughter understand her brain better. Because I think it's easier to advocate, or because advocacy comes with education. Right? Yes, it's about standing up for myself, but also I need to educate, because people might be acting ignorantly because they don't have the knowledge or they don't know. So if I was to advocate for myself, I need to be fully educated about my neurotype, if you like. So what are some of the books, if any, or some of the tools that you have empowered Diana to look at in order to understand her brain and how her brain works?
I think we live in an era that is just like information rich. So for anything that you want, someone already put a solution for that in place. So there's really like amazing books that can teach children, like for example, with emotions, like that if I have dyslexia, the whole book is telling you a story of the child and how the brain is like working differently. So it doesn't matter where we go, whether it's tools, digital platforms, apps, there's information. We just need to go and Google, find it. But personally, once again, like I'm a human contact person, and I think that there is no one better than a parent to be able to assist these children with explaining. And if I, as a parent, if I don't accept my child unconditionally, who in this world will accept my child? So children needs to be accepted like in their immediate environments, and when they feel safe in their immediate environment, they phase in so much easier into the bigger world and into the schools and into the standardized systems, because they know it doesn't matter what happens here at school today, it doesn't matter what happened here when I go home, I'm loved, I'm accepted, and I feel safe. So human connection, we can never ever replace human connection.
It's critical. I mean, I keep hearing, and I'm sure you as the audience at home, you keep hearing the human connection. Obviously, Yolanda previously covered this, I think, at length. If you watched the previous episode, our other, the peace discipline, Karen, also covered the human connection. So really, it cannot be emphasized enough that the human connection is important. Take that time to teach your child about their neurotype so that they're empowered to advocate for themselves. And if I may, I would say you don't even have to Google. We will share with you, as we have shared in the previous episode, if your child is dyslexic, there are platforms you can contact. And I'm sure if you go to Yolanda's Facebook page and her website, you can get a lot of resources and scientific knowledge, which is much more than what Google usually could give you. Because when you want to advocate or educate the people about your neurotype, you want to be able to share the facts and not just the opinions of people. So you are more than welcome to go check Yolanda's website and the Facebook page if your child is dyslexic, but also a few of our experts as well. If your child needs support with speech therapy, and so on and so on, you can check actual experts who give you actual scientific information. So as we're looking forward, you have covered a little bit about we looked at what the word support and accommodation in the school context mean. You talked about the school leadership yourself and how the teachers can, that the teachers are empowered because they deal with these learners at a very basic level, so they fully understand what's going on. So what changes would you like to see as an expert, but also a mom? What changes would you like to see in the schooling system, and also in the leadership when it comes to supporting advocacy or supporting neurodiversity in general?
I think the biggest issue is just the biggest change that we need is inclusion. Yes, it looks beautiful on paper to say that we have an inclusive education system. We have inclusive practices, but even when you state everything about inclusion, you still exclude, you still discriminate, you still let these children with a different brain suffer the system because you are not really inclusive for neurodiversity. So I really want, like, all the leaders and the principals, the management teams, the SGBs, they need to include neurodiversity in the schools, and they need to stop that deficit approach. And this could have been like such a huge celebration once again. This child with all these barriers, all these struggles, she never gave up. She shows up every single day at school. She gives her best. She's top performer in everything. Why can't we not celebrate that? So it's a huge opportunity to celebrate neurodiversity, but then the mentality from the school is like, but we can't put on the leader group because she sometimes struggles to speak. not all leaders need to speak. Leadership is more about how I am an example to my peers, respect, how I represent my school, and how I show up, my perseverance. So being a leader is not just like about the ability to speak. And if the management in schools can just like stop the deficit approach and be more inclusive, like really, like we are an inclusive school, so we include, that we can specifically start looking at, you know what, these are the neurodivergent children in our school. We need to celebrate them as well. We need to give them equal opportunities. So we need to make sure that we act in their best interest as well. So I think that will be really a huge break in the education field.
I hear you, Yolanda, and I can't help but think about whether this is a national problem, because is it just at a school level? I mean, does it go beyond the school level with policymakers, or at least those that are doing monitoring and evaluation, to check that these laws or these provisions that are made within the Constitution are actually being implemented at the school level by the school leaders or the school management?
From my own experience, I have to say I'm really very disappointed. I followed all the channels. So even in South Africa, there's a constitution, and the constitution protects you from any discrimination. So I followed the channels to have a meeting with the SGB. I went to the school management. I went to the district. I went to the education department. And wherever I went they just like didn't take my concern serious. And we're working with discrimination. We're working with a body that is supposed to protect my child. And all that I actually wanted was that when you make a mistake, so children make mistakes, they take responsibility for it. Schools can make mistakes, departments can make mistakes, humans, adults can make mistakes. But when you make a mistake, you have to admit and you have to find a way to rectify it. And for 7 months now, we've been fighting this battle. And even though I have the evidence of the discrimination, no one ever said and say, you know what, we made a mistake. You know what, sure, we didn't see it this way. And I think that is a problem, that I had to go to the extent to work with a minister, and still the discrimination were just like pushed under the carpet. So that is a very big concern for me. So once again, it is a top performing child facing discrimination. But what if I had a child that were like really also multiple barriers of learning, the parents did not advocate for the child, and that emotional trauma, the mental health that the child is like suffering, no one's standing up for the child, the child needs to face the school system every single day. These children are not protected. So I really think that policymakers, the Minister of Education, that they need to make sure that if they say that they're inclusive, they need to be inclusive. The Constitution is protecting you for discrimination. The School Code of Conduct is protecting you against discrimination. But in my own experience, my child was not protected. No one took accountability for the discrimination that she experienced.
Yeah, sure. And I know as you speak that lots of parents are in the same boat. And how I know is because when we had a session with one of the parents in Gauteng, she also mentioned the same frustrations. And I can't help but wonder whether is there hope? Can the parents at home who have gone through similar to what you've gone through for their children who are on the spectrum, is there a glimpse of hope? Is there something hopeful?
Yes, I really do want to give them hope today. And once again, from my own experience as well, yes, my child went through a really very difficult time, unnecessary trauma. She had to see a clinical psychologist to be able to work through this. But if I look at my child today, yes, the injustice was unfair. She did not deserve it. it could have been prevented, and the opportunity to celebrate it was missed. But when I look at my child, I see so much perseverance. I see so much determination, internal something within her.
Intrinsic motivation that comes naturally because of that rejection.
She stood up stronger than ever before.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important. So a lot of the times these things happen to children, but it destroys them because they don't have the support. But because I made sure that Diana got the support, she just like stood up, and she's stronger than ever before. And once again, that is part of the neurodivergence brain. The brain puts a coping mechanism in place. The brain just like, don't give up. The brain will find ways to work through it. And also like that, you keep on pushing yourself harder and harder. So last year, Diana was number 3rd and 4th in the grade. This year, she's like number 2, and she's working for being number 1 in the grade. So I can see that, yes, it was really traumatic for her and very difficult for her. But I can also see how she matured, how she discovered like having a voice, and my voice matters, my story matters. What was done to me was unjust and unfair, but I'm not going to back down. I'm going to be in the face. I'm going to show them. You tell me that I cannot speak. And here I stand up and I'm speaking. And although it is still difficult for me, but I don't back off. And I think that is inspiration that I want to give to parents, that it doesn't matter what happens. Don't back down. Continue to stand up for your child. Believe in your child. Ask the difficult questions and do whatever you have to do, because these children, they deserve acknowledgement. They deserve a space in society.
Just like that. It's time to reflect, as we always do. I don't want to add or remove to Yolanda's words, but what would our schools look like if every child, regardless of how they learn, felt, seen, heard, and celebrated? And what role are you willing to play in making it a reality? I'm going to say it again. Just think about this. What would our schools look like if every child, doesn't matter how they learn, how they feel or felt, seen or heard or celebrated, and what role are you willing to play in making that a reality?
To find out more about dyslexia, visit our website at www.dyslexiaspecialist.co.za.
This is it from Beyond the Box. I hope you like, subscribe, and follow us. Until next time, goodbye.